Welcome, everybody, to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, aka Wishes Mama. And on today's episode of Mom Street USA, I'm tackling a question that I feel like gets asked a lot in the Disney parks community, especially from first time visitors or first time parents going to the park. And that is what's in my Disney park bag. So, we're going to be talking today about all of the things that I tend to bring to the parks with me. And I also put this question out on our Discord server, our good friend Cricket Walrus Carp. We have a channel over there, and I put this out to all of our Mom Street listeners to give some input too. So I'm going to include some of the things that they said as well. So thank you to those of you who responded to me over there and gave me your input. It is greatly appreciated. But we are going to be talking all about things that you take into the parks with you in your bags and what that kind of looks like is the plan for today. So the first thing that I want to mention is that the level of what you pack and how much you pack is going to greatly vary based on the ages of your travel party, right? So if you are traveling with little infants or toddlers or even like those young preschoolers, your items that you bring with you are going to look vastly different than what someone who's got maybe a school age kiddo is going to bring or a teenager is going to bring, right? So I'm going to give you kind of two different categories today as we talk about parks bags to kind of give you an idea of, hey, this is what I would think for this younger age, and here's kind of what you can look at for this older age. If you're somewhere in between or you feel like you need a little bit of both, feel free to pick and choose from these lists. And this is not an end all be all list. This is just kind of what I tend to bring and what some of our Mom Street listeners tend to bring. Before we jump into the contents of a parks bag, I do just want to mention kind of the method that I tend to use. And I used this method all the way up until actually this most recent trip that I went on with my family. And that is, I tend to kind of pack two different park bags. And that may sound a little crazy and like a lot, but it's not as much as as you would think it is. Because what I tend to do is everything that is replaceable goes in one bag. So that might be extra clothes. You can buy extra clothes. That might be water bottles. You can buy water bottles. Things like that like it would be a bummer if they got lost, went missing, but they're replaceable. All of that goes into one bag for me. That bag typically stays with our stroller because we have young kids still. We still need a stroller. That is what I typically would do prior to this most recent trip. And I'll talk about that here in just a minute. So, everything, snacks, all that stuff that's replaceable. Then I will carry a second, very small bag, typically like a crossbody or a fanny pack. And in there is all of the irreplaceable things, right? It's our money, it's our IDs, it's our gift cards and wallets and things like that. Our phones for, my husband and I, those types of things will go in that smaller fanny pack. And that never leaves my body, right? That goes with me on everything. It's always with me. It doesn't get left on the stroller ever because everything in there is irreplaceable. You don't want to lose your ID, your wallet, your phone while you're down in the parks. So those things all stay on me. So that tends to be my kind of approach when I've got younger kids. Now, this last trip when we went, we still sort of did that, but kind of to a lesser extent. My husband and I both carried lounge flies on this last trip. And my lounge fly was kind of the essentials and that, things, irreplaceable items. And his lounge fly was the replaceable stuff. But it didn't always stay with our stroller. It just really depended on where we were going, what we were doing, and those types of things. So you can kind of pick and choose and do a variance of that depending on the needs of your group, right? But when our kids were little, that's what we always did. We found it much easier. So we didn't have to like scramble and panic and think about, okay, what's in our stroller? What's in this bag? Do I need to take this with me? Can this stay here? Is it okay if it falls off or someone grabs it? You never know at the Disney parks, right? They're generally safe, but there's still a public place with thousands of people, so you never know. So that was kind of the approach that we always took to our parks bags, just to make it a little more seamless for us, make it a little bit easier for us whenever it came to parking the stroller and going to get on a ride. That being said, I am going to touch on strollers one more time probably in this episode, but I'm going to do a deep dive on strollers on my next Mom Street, which will be in a few episodes from now, but that is coming. So if you want more information about strollers at the parks, that is coming your way very soon. So let's talk about if you are visiting the parks with infants, toddlers, or really young preschoolers. What does your park bag look like? And again, this is me speaking from experience. And this is also, I just did a Disney trip with varying ages. On our last Disney trip, we had 4 kiddos aged 10 months, 4 years old, 6 years old, and 8 years old. So I kind of spanned this age gap and then some. So I'm going to talk about school age here in a little bit. And then also, like I said, I put it out to our Mom Street community to give me their input on what they typically would pack. So we're going to kind of compile a list. Now, as you're listening to this, you may or may not need some of the things that I'm going to mention, right? You know your group, but I would say most of these are pretty essential to consider for putting in your park bag. Again, a lot of this stuff is going to be that replaceable stuff that can just stay in the stroller in a bigger backpack. And then you'll know which things you want to take with you in either a lounge fly or a smaller fanny pack or whatever that may be. So a couple things that are really obvious for packing in your bag with your infant, toddler, young preschooler, uh, any sort of meal type prep that you need for them, whether that be formula and bottles, whether that be silicone lids. They make those kind of stretchy lids that you can put over top of cups. So that way any open cup becomes a sippy cup for your little, or a lid with a straw, those types of things. Whatever you need for your kiddo to be successful at mealtime, you want to make sure you have that with you. Also, diapers or pull-ups and wipes obviously are something that you want to carry with you as well. If you ever run short, and you'll hear me talk about this again, baby care centers are great for that. If, something ever happens, if you set your wipes down, you leave them somewhere, you lose them along the way, head to the baby care center. They're going to be able to help you out, which is really great that every park has one. So just be aware of that if you ever get into a situation where you are in desperate need of something like that. Be aware of that as well. You could consider if your diaper bag or backpack that you're using has room for one of those fold out changing pads, whether or not you want to bring it. The way that changing tables work at Disney is they're not necessarily located in a stall, which is what you find at a lot of like restaurants or places like Target, Walmart that you go out and go shopping. They typically have one that's kind of around the corner from the sink area in most of the bathrooms. And it is a hard, surface. So you can decide whether or not you want to bring a changing pad with you as far as that goes. And again, kind of more with the meal stuff, any sorts of purees, snacks, little baby spoons, any of that type of stuff that you want to that you're going to need for your kiddo to be successful at mealtime. You want to make sure that you have that with you. And I would throw a couple extras in. They may be on a very regular eating schedule, but putting them in the heat, putting them in a new overstimulating environment, putting them in a situation where maybe they aren't getting as long or as many naps as normal, they may need more in that situation. So keep that in mind as well whenever you're looking at how many. Make sure you've got a couple extra snacks, or make sure you know where in the parks you can get kind of something that you need. There are several locations, a lot of quick services will have fruit and things like that, but it really just depends on the needs of your kiddo and what they typically like to have. So all of those things you want to make sure you have kind of handled in your bag for your kiddo to be successful at meal times. Couple other things to include: always have a set of extra clothes. And I would encourage this all the way up through into early elementary school too. Having an extra set of clothes, whether for Potty accidents, whether for weather, if you've got a kiddo that cannot handle having wet clothes if they get rained on, you never know, right? So always having just one set of extra clothes in your bag, even if it's just for peace of mind, even if you never need it on your entire trip, I think that's super helpful to have. And then alongside of that, having a few Ziploc bags in there as well. And what we tend to do is we just put our kids' extra clothes in a Ziploc, squish all the air out of it, and then we know that, hey, if they need those extra clothes and they've got dirty clothes, we can just swap them, and then they go into the bag, get sealed up, and we can handle them when we're not in the parks. But I would also throw in a couple other Ziplocs, either like 1 or 2 gallon size or quart size Ziplocs in your bag. You never know when they might come in handy. That also being said, you're gonna want to make sure you have a plan if you're using bottles, that you have a plan for where your used or dirty bottles are gonna go in your bag. Because despite your kiddo getting most of the formula, milk, whatever it is in there out, there is still the chance that those could leak a little bit on the other contents of your bag. So you wanna make sure you have a wet bag or just a Ziploc or some sort of bag that seals to have those in your bag after you use them. Same goes for spoons or bibs or any of that kind of stuff. And again, anyone who has an infant or a toddler, this is all kind of second nature to you. This is what you guys already know, what you guys have in your diaper bags or in your car bags or go bags, whatever you call them. But just a reminder that that's always a great idea to have a few extra Ziplocs in your bag just in case. Now, let's talk about some things that maybe you don't carry day to day, but you definitely need to carry when you are at the Disney parks. Some sort of a hat or sunglasses for yourself and for your little. The sun down there, especially if you're not used to Florida, is very hot. You are a lot closer to the sun. If you're from, I'm from Ohio. When I go down to Florida, I am a lot closer to the sun down there than I am up here in Ohio for the most part. So, hats and sunglasses for everyone are always a really great idea. Sunscreen, that should be a given, but making sure that you have an extra uh, container of sunscreen in your bag because you're always going to want to make sure that you reapply. Another good thing along with that is making sure you have some sort of a lip balm or chapstick, and preferably one that's got an SPF on it. Again, the sun in Florida, I'm talking mostly about Florida, but all of this does apply to Disneyland in California as well. The weather there is a little bit different, right, than Florida. We've talked about that previously on Mom Street, but uh, all of my experience comes from Florida. So that's kind of where I pull my information from. But having some sort of a chapstick with SPF is a really great idea for both Disney World and Disneyland to make sure that you are protecting all aspects because you don't want to put regular sunscreen on your lips. Not a good idea. So chapstick with SPF is always a great idea. A couple other things for mom and dad to maybe worry about carrying around. Uh, some extra deodorant in your bag is always a great idea. You get hot and sweaty in the parks, you end up on buses or on the monorail or wherever close proximity to people. Having an extra stick of deodorant in your bag is always a great idea. The people around you will thank you. Also, water bottles are hugely important, and we've talked about this on Mom Street. Take your refillable water bottles into the parks with you. There are so many places you can get water. There are a ton of water bottle filling stations on a lot of the water fountains now. Even more, whenever I went a couple weeks ago, I noticed more of the kind of uh, where the water fountains were at the bottom and up above there was the push button where you could put your bottle underneath to fill. A lot more of those have been popping up on the water fountains in the parks as well as if you want water with ice, you can always get them at quick service restaurants. Again, lots of places to get water. Be sure you have water bottles with you. And also, if you are traveling with an infant, you wanna kind of maybe get them used to a little bit of a sippy cup or have them used to maybe drinking some water out of a bottle. Again, this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor before you go, depending on how old your infant is. But I think it's always a good idea to get them used to drinking at least some water so that way they don't get dehydrated. This is just my best mom advice, that if they are old enough, it's a really good idea to start to get them used to drinking some water before your trip. So that way when you're down there, it won't be completely foreign to them and they will be able to drink some as you're going through. Again, dehydration is no joke, especially for littles. The signs are going to be a lot harder to tell. So you want to try to avoid that as much as possible. Along with that, cooling towels are a really great idea if you are going to the parks when it's really, really hot outside. Um, Cooling towels were a lifesaver on our last trip when we just went. We had not really used them before, but it was very, very hot at the beginning of our trip when we went. And my little 10-month-old niece, we would get the cooling towel all situated and then just put it on her legs like a blanket, and she was happy as could be. My kids also use them around their necks, around their heads, just a really great thing to have to keep cool. And the nice thing is, like, for example, ours that we got off of, I think we just ordered them online, came with little bags that you could store them in, and all of the bags had a little clip on them. So we just used one carabiner and we clipped all four of our cooling towels onto it, and we clipped it on the outside of our stroller because it wasn't something that we needed to carry in our parks bag, but it was something that could just be clipped to the stroller. And then even when my husband folded our stroller for the buses, they were not in the way. We could fold the stroller up, leave them hooked on, and they could just stay there the whole time, which was really nice. And it prevented them from getting gross and not drying out completely because the bags that they were in were meant for them to be put in after we were done using them. So that was a really great accidental find with our carabiner because I just had a couple with me because I figured we would need them for something. And that was a really great lifesaver because it was something that we didn't have to put in our bags and figure out where we were going to put. We just hooked it onto the side of the stroller and that worked out well. So cooling towels are a really great idea. Handheld fans and a stroller fan obviously would be something along with that. But if we're talking more about what's in your bag, handheld fans. I am a big fan, get it, of these little ones like this. If you can see me on video, this is just a little portable fan that folds out. And it's got a couple different speeds on it, but my kids both have these and they are great. They are, I don't know if you can hear that. They give just enough air to keep you cool. And the nice thing about these is they're not completely childproof, right? But the blade will stop if you touch it. So if I accidentally put my finger on it, it doesn't hurt, first of all, because it's plastic. And second of all, it automatically stopped without me having to turn it off. And I think that's a really great asset of having a fan like this. Also, they're really, really cute when you fold them up. If you look at the front, it looks like a little bear. It's got a little bear nose and little bear ears on it. So my kids, I bought them both their own. So that way they weren't stealing mine. So I had one and both of my kids had them. And I just think they're a really great little portable fan. The battery life on these is really, really good. And the other nice thing is they do have a flashlight on them, which is nice too. My kids used this a couple times when they dropped things like on the floor or under the bed in our resort room if they were looking for it. So it's really nice that it's got that little flashlight on the end too. It is also a portable charger if you need it to be. We didn't use it as a portable charger. We just used it as the light and the fan because my kids didn't need a portable charger and we had other ones with us anyway. I imagine if you use it as a charger, it would probably drain the battery pretty fast. But those fans are a really great thing to have. And I would say kids anywhere from 4 and up could probably handle that type of a fan. And it's got a little strap on it too, which is really nice for carrying it around. So some sort of a fan for your stroller, a handheld fan if you've got kiddos that are maybe going to be in and out of the stroller. Very, very important to have. The next thing on my list is very, very important for Florida. California, maybe not so much unless you're visiting during the rainy season, but in Florida, you always want to make sure that you have some sort of a poncho or a rain jacket. Those summer storms and into a little bit of the spring and a little bit into the fall are no joke, and they will pop up out of nowhere. So you want to make sure that you have some sort of a poncho or a rain jacket that you're carrying along with you just to be safe. Um, we used ours several times on our trip because we had one of the rainiest trips that I've had in recent years. I was very grateful to have our ponchos with us, and so were my kids. Sometimes they kind of used them as a tent in the stroller, and sometimes they wore them just as ponchos. But either way, having one of those in your bag is super, super important. A couple other things that you may or may not need, depending on your group. We always carry either headphones or earplugs. My kiddo, especially my oldest, is really, really sound sensitive, primarily during the fireworks, but also during some of the other attractions and shows. It can be really loud, and he does not enjoy that. So we used to, when he was this age, we had headphones. We had either baby safe headphones that would come on like an elastic headband that he would wear, or once he was old enough to do just like the over the head standard headphones, we would bring them into the parks with us, which is something you have to kind of coordinate. Getting some of the ones that fold compact into like a little, they're not completely out and open all the time and they fold into like a smaller little bundle is really helpful. But my kiddos now are big enough that they can do just earplugs, which is a huge, huge benefit of that. And I'll talk about their earplugs here in just a little bit. But some sort of ear protection, especially for infants, is a really good idea because even rides like, for example, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I don't know why that ride is so loud, but it's so loud, and it's an all age, all height ride, so little babies can go on that, but it is such a loud ride, so having that ear protection and being prepared for those situations is always a really good idea. If you're seeing something like Fantasmic or the fireworks, if you're planning to stand close by, you wanna make sure that you have ear protection for your littles, and then as they get older, they may or may not want, to have that just to give them that sense of security because fireworks are loud, no matter any age, right? The other thing to think about in your bag as primarily for mom and dad at this age is your power bank and charging cords. You want to make sure you have those. We all know how much we have to live on our phones at the Disney parks. So having some sort of a charger is always a really good idea. My husband has a MagSafe charger that he really, really likes. I use fuel rods. You guys, most of you probably know about fuel rods. These are the exchangeable power banks that you can get in the parks. There's lots of machines all around. Order them on Amazon ahead of time. The nice thing is these new ones do have the LED that tells you whether or not how much charge you have in yours. But these are really, really helpful. I've got two, and that is plenty to get me through, even if I am living on my phone, if I am taking content or I'm booking lightning lanes or mobile ordering or whatever it may be. Having some sort of charger is a really, really great idea, for your park days. Something else to consider for your Disney Parks bag is if you are someone that is concerned about clothes rubbing or skin rubbing, any sort of chafing, this stuff is really great. This is called Mega Babe, and it is just an anti-friction stick. There's lots of different types of these out there, but having something in your park bags to help combat that is always a really good idea. And the last thing that I will mention for this age, we're going to talk about a little bit older kids here in a moment, but you always want to have just a small little first aid kit with you. A few Band-Aids, maybe some Neosporin, some Advil for mom and dad. Uh, but do keep in mind that the majority of anything that you would need is going to be available at either the baby care center or first aid in the parks. So I do not recommend carrying a giant first aid kit with you. A couple band-aids is probably all you'll need in a pinch. Now, do things happen? Yes, of course, things happen. But generally speaking, having a few band-aids and having some Advil for mom and dad's feet later on throughout your trip is always a good idea. But you really don't need to carry a huge amount of first aid items with you into the parks. It is going to be readily available for you at first aid if you get in a pinch, or you can always go to, like, for example, we were at the pool at our resort. My daughter had a little cut on her foot, and we went to one of the lifeguards, and they had a whole kit with a bunch of Band-Aids in it. So, like, you're gonna be able to find what you need in the parks from the majority of the cast members that you come across, so keep that in mind. You don't feel like you have to carry this gigantic first aid kit with you. So with your school age kiddos that you're visiting the parks with, chances are good that a lot of these kiddos are going to be able to carry their own bag. I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute. But before we get to that, I'm going to just kind of run down this list of what it might look like in your park bag if you are bringing a school age kiddo. And when I say school age, I mean typically like elementary school, right? 6 to 10-ish, kind of in that range, maybe 5 is what we're talking about here. So a lot of the same things as what we said earlier, really, is what you're going to need. Not as many feeding type things, right? You're not going to need to worry about bottles or purees or any of that kind of stuff. And obviously, you're at this point most likely not going to be worried about pull-ups, wipes, those types of things. But still, an extra set of clothes is always a good idea, even up through, like I said, about 8 or 9. Having an extra set of clothes just in case. You never know. You would hate to be stuck without when you need them. So I always suggest throwing an extra t-shirt, an extra pair of shorts in your bag for them just in case. And again, Ziploc bags, you never know when you might need them. Things get wet. If you need to protect something, if you're going on a water ride, Ziploc bags are always your friend when it comes to that. So just throw a few in your bag just in case you need them. Um, Snacks, granola bars, protein bars, something with protein in it is always a really good idea, especially if your kiddos tend to get hangry. My oldest goes from 0 to 100 when it comes to getting hangry. So we had Cliff bars, protein bars, those types of things for him in the morning. He doesn't usually get a morning snack, but when we were at the parks, he did, just to make sure that he was good to go all the way until we made it to our lunch stop for the day. Sunglasses, hats, sunscreen, again, all of those types of things are a great idea. Hand sanitizer. This is something we haven't talked much about yet, and you will probably use it for your younger kiddos. Or you'll, work on washing their hands, use the wipes to wipe their hands off, those types of things. But we are a huge fan of these little spray hand sanitizers. This one's from Bath and Body Works, but you can get them from all different kinds of companies now, make them in this spray option. It's so much nicer than the gel kind because if the kid turns their hand at all, you guys know it slides right off. So having the spray like this is really nice. So we use these a lot every day when we go out places too. But using the spray, especially in the parks, is really nice because my kids would put their hands out, and so would my niece and my husband and my sister. Everyone put their hands out, and I just go down and spray the line. That way we could all have our clean hands. But the spray, I highly suggest doing that as opposed to having the like gel kind for that reason. Again, chapstick, some sort of lip balm with an SPF is always a great idea. Water bottles, we already talked about. I didn't talk about my favorite brand of water bottle, which is the Owala. You can see all my lovely Disney stickers on here. Um, I love these water bottles. I love that they have the handle. I love that you can lock them. I love that you can either use the straw or you can tip and pour it in your mouth. They keep things really cold, which is nice. If you put ice in this, you're set for the whole day. So I really love Owala brand. I know there's lots of different kinds of water bottles out there, but I really prefer those. They're really durable. My daughter, uh, I don't know what it was on this last trip with her, but I think she dropped her Owala probably 17 times while we were at the parks. It held up great. It's got some dents on the bottom now, but overall still functional. That's all that really matters, right? So love that brand. That's a really great one. And they come in a bunch of different sizes. If you're someone who's carrying a Loungefly or a smaller bag, they make like a little 14-ounce one that I'll bring sometimes if I know I'm just going to have a fanny pack and not a stroller or a bigger bag to keep this size one. This is a 24-ounce one. But the little 14-ounce one is really good for that. You just have to refill more often, but it's nice to not have one that's quite as heavy to carry around. So big fan of those. Let's see what else. Cooling towels. Again, we talked about cooling towels. And if you're someone who doesn't have a stroller at this point, but you want to have cooling towels, I really suggest that grabbing a carabiner of some sort. You can find them for cheap online or at Walmart or wherever, and just hooking them to the outside of your bag. You don't really want to stuff your wet cooling towels back inside your parks bag. So having some sort of a clip on the outside, um, I would clip them to like the on my Loungefly strap where the adjustable part was. There's like that little square buckle. I would clip them to that if I need to, or to the top little handle on the top of my Loungefly. That's where I would hook them to as well. So, but I highly suggest doing that. Again, fans, like I said, I have this one too. I think it's really great to have some sort of small, compact fan. Ponchos or rain jackets we talked about. Now, let's talk about earplugs at this age. Typically, once you get to about 5, 6 years old, your kiddos are going to be able to handle, if they need ear protection, they're going to be able to handle doing something more like an earplug. My kids both use this brand called Vibes. They're very similar to the Loop earplugs as well. Whereas these just dampen, but they don't alter the sound, which is really great. But if you see, and I'm showing this to our video friends here, it is just a little clear plastic base with one of those adjustable rubber tops on it. And when you order them, it comes with 3 sizes. The smallest size fits both of my kiddos. So they're 6 and 8. The smallest size of this fits them. We did a couple trial runs with these before we took them to the parks because I wanted to make sure that they were going to stay in, they were going to fit. Now, you do have to be really careful because these are teeny tiny, right? They're not giant headphones. They're very easy to lose. So I kept both of their little cases in my bag rather than letting them keep them in their bags, which again, we'll talk about kiddo bags here in just a minute. But I kept them in my bag, and then I would be very strategic about handing them one at a time and making sure that it was all the way in their ear before I handed them the next one. I think this brand is really great. Like I said, the smallest size does fit my kiddos. So a really, really great option to have in the parks if you've got a kiddo that needs them. Again, we talked about with the younger kids for the grown-ups having power banks, charger cords, things like that. You may need them for your kiddos' own devices. If they've got a Kindle, if they've got a phone or a small iPad or something that they're bringing into the parks with them to help them wait in line or whatever, the use may be of that, making sure you have power banks and charging cords for those. And again, a small first aid kit. Um, those are all things that I would consider essentials. Now, this next list that I'm going to give you are things that you might want to bring with you if you feel like your group, it's going to be helpful for your group, right? These are things just to consider. I don't necessarily know that I would call any of them completely essential. A lot of them are a really good idea, and I do put a lot of these in my bag as well, but I wouldn't consider them as essential as some of the other things that we just talked about. So a couple other things to consider. One of the really great ones that we got online that I hadn't even considered putting on the list, but it's something that I do, is having a slap bracelet for holding your ears when you're not on the rides. So we like to use the little Disney slap bracelets called cutie cuffs. This is one that we've got. This is a cute little Sleepy Stitch one, but they're little character plushes that are slap bracelets. So what you can do is when you go to take your ears off to ride any sort of a ride, let me see if I can do this without totally messing my hair up. You can take the slap bracelet and you wrap it around the top, and then you wrap this bottom part where it's open around your bag strap, and it will hold them on. Now, is it like the most secure hold in the world? No. Will it work for getting on and off the ride? Yeah, I've never had an issue with that as long as I had a good sturdy slap bracelet. You can get slap bracelets even at the parks as well. They have a lot of the times they have them up by the registers. We've gotten a couple that way, but having a slap bracelet on your bag for that purpose is a really great idea. And like I said, we like these little cutie cuff plushy ones because then my kids can have their slap bracelet on their wrist as well whenever we're not going on rides. Another option that we always bring with us, and this is something that we do to save us a little bit of money when we're in the parks, is we bring glow sticks. So we go online or we go to the store and we buy one of those big tubes of the glow sticks that you can make into bracelets and necklaces and all that kind of stuff. Um, and we will throw a few in our bag in the morning. And then that way, when it starts to get dark out, we can break them out, help the kiddos open them and break them apart. And they can do bracelets or necklaces, things like that. And it's a really fun thing for them to do in the evening times. We usually grab like 3 or 4 per kid and just throw them in the bag, either in like a Ziploc baggie or in like a pouch on the inside of our backpack, depending on what we're doing. So that's a really great option if you've got kiddos who maybe will gravitate towards some of those light up toys that you see that come out when it starts to get dark in the parks. Having some glow sticks on hand to help maybe distract away from that can always be a helpful thing to have. Um, Kind of in a similar regards to that, having some sort of a fidget toy in your bag can be a really great idea. A fidget spinner, a little fidget cube, anything like that for waiting in line, for standing and waiting for fireworks, for you, for your kiddo, for both. Having some sort of a fidget toy is a great idea, as long as it's something small, but like not small enough to get dropped and lost easily. A couple other things that you can consider carrying would be a hairbrush and extra hairbands or headbands, things like that, that you may or may not need depending on your group. I always carry an extra hairbrush with me, and I usually have at least one hair tie kind of wrapped around the handle of it just in case. When it's hot outside, I don't use it as often because usually my hair is pulled back and out of my face. When it's a little cooler and I have my hair down, I use my brush a lot. So I like to leave my hair down when I can, but that's a great option to have as well. If you are going when it's really, really hot outside, I do recommend having some sort of liquid IV or electrolytes to add to your water bottle. This is something that we used a lot on our last trip. Even for my kiddos, I would give them, in their big Owalas, I would give them one of the liquid IVs that we had with us just to help replenish. When you sweat, you lose a lot of that sodium, and electrolytes are really helpful to being able to replenish that. So throwing a couple of those in your bag is always a good idea, especially if you're visiting during the really, really hot months. It's definitely something to consider. A few other things to consider for the hot summer months in Florida. If you are someone who does not do well in the sun, considering a UV sun umbrella is a really great option. Something small and compact that can fold down or hang on your bag is a really great option. But I am seeing these being used more in the parks now. I don't suggest giving them to your kids just because umbrellas in the parks with kiddos who are maybe a little bit shorter than some of the adult guests, probably not a great idea for the people around you. But if you've got one that you want to share with them, that's a great idea of something to consider. But do consider that when you are carrying that through security, you wanna hold it out in front of you as far as you can when you walk through the metal detector because it will go off on the metal detector, so keep that in mind. Same thing can go for some of the power banks if they're bigger ones. Same thing with those as well. Couple other things to consider. Again, these are just things to consider for your parks bags. Having floss or those little flosser picks in there. Tissues if you think you're going to need them, and maybe like a little Tide to Go pen. Those are all great things to consider. And some of those options were suggested by our Mom Street community. Thank you very much to those of you who gave us those suggestions. But all of those are a really great option to consider if you think you're going to need it. Do I think they're absolutely necessary? Probably not, but they're definitely something to consider depending on your preferences, but depending on your group you're traveling with, those types of things. And the last thing that I have on my things to consider list for your Disney Parks bag is whether or not you want to have the shoe covers if it rains. So they make these, they almost, depending on what kind you get, some of them look like shower caps for your shoes. Some of them look like little zip up ponchos for your shoes. But having a plan for when your shoes get wet, especially if you are visiting Florida during the summer months or visiting Disneyland during the rainy season, having some sort of a plan, either wearing shoes that you know can get wet and will dry fine. But if you are wearing tennis shoes, having some sort of a plan, because walking around with wet shoes and wet socks all day is not a great plan for your feet. So, whether that's shoe covers or planning your shoe wear accordingly, something to consider as well for that. Okay, so that is kind of my things to consider list. Let's talk about child-friendly backpacks and what should your kids be carrying once they're old enough to have their own bag in the parks. So, if you are to the point where you think your kiddo is ready to carry their own bag, let's talk a little bit about child-friendly backpacks and what to pack in them. I would suggest this is what we did and it worked out well, starting with a smaller kind of crossbody for your younger kiddos. This is one that I got my daughter, and it's just a small little crossbody that has just one main pouch on it, and it had just enough space for her to be able to carry a few things that I thought she would want to have on her at all times. And it was small enough that it could be stuck down in the bottom of the stroller because I knew that she wasn't going to carry it around with her the whole time. For my son, who's a little bit older, he got a little bit of a bigger bag, more of like a standard size crossbody, a little bit bigger crossbody bag. Um, I gave him a little bit more freedom to put some other things in his because I knew that he was more likely, and he did, carry his bag for longer periods of time. But I would start with a smaller kind of crossbody option for them, so it's not too heavy, but it will still hold a few things for them. The things that I had my kiddos put in their bags that they were responsible for were all things that I knew they were gonna need, and again, were small enough to fit into their space and not super heavy. Sunglasses, their fans, I showed you guys what their fans looked like earlier, really compact. One of the sanitizer sprays that we had, they each had their own in their bag. A chapstick if they wanted it. Then they have little tiny digital cameras, so they carried their little cameras as well. And then we did decide because we had them to put little AirTag trackers in their bags just in case their bags got left somewhere and we needed to go back and find them. So they each had a little AirTag in their little crossbody bag as well. The other thing that we let our kiddos do for this trip was they each had one of these pinfolio boards that they carried because they slid really nicely just right along the front or back of their crossbodies. They started pin trading this trip, so this was something that we let them carry, and they were responsible for their pins. So I gave them starter pins that I had gotten at the Disney outlet for a discount, and they were in charge of their pins, and they were in charge of having them on them if they wanted to trade, things like that. Speaking of, if you want more information about Disney collections for kids, we did a whole episode on that, episode 82, I think it is. So hop back a couple if you want to hear more about different collection ideas for kids. But that was something else they kept because this is very flat and compact and easy to keep in their bags with them. So they kept that as well. And that was pretty much it. Now, with my daughter's bag, the only thing that didn't fit was her camera, but her brother agreed to put it in his because his bag was a little bit bigger and he had more space. So that worked out fine. Now, I will note that with their bags, we did allow our kiddos to attach one or two small plushie toys to their bags using either a slap bracelet or a hair tie method. So that way they had a friend with them in the park. So I showed you guys this little stitch. This is actually my daughter's. Um, so this is a slap bracelet one. And what we would do is once their bag was full and they were ready to go, we would just put these little guys on their bags. And then whenever they wore them, they were just on the strap and they could carry them around, but they were hands free, right? They didn't have to hold on to the toy and we didn't have to worry about them leaving it or setting it down somewhere and forgetting it, right? Then both of my kids brought one of their Nuimos with them as well, and we used the hair tie method, which I'm sure most of you have seen, but basically you wrap the hair tie around one of their arms, around the back of your strap, and then around the other arm to keep them on the strap of your bag. So we did allow our kids to do that as well with their bags this time. And that all worked out really well. They had the things that they needed. We had the more important things, right? Everything in their bag was replaceable. Sunglasses, fans, even pins, right? It would be a real big bummer if their pins got lost, but it's all replaceable. So it wasn't something that we were overly concerned about. The other precaution we did take was putting that air tag in their bags just to make sure uh, if they did set it down that we'd be able to go back and find it. Luckily, we didn't have any issues with that. Aside from my daughter almost leaving her bag in a stall in one of the bathrooms, but we were able to go we realized it before we even left the bathroom, so that was fine. But it was really nice to see that my 8-year-old, that he was able to carry his bag for most of that time. So that gives me hope that on future trips, we'll have the same success and he can be in charge of a few more things, maybe put some snacks for himself in there, those types of things as well. So again, that's what I would suggest starting with. Now, if you've got a little bit older kiddos, maybe ages 10 and up, right? You may need to upgrade them to a smaller backpack size instead of a crossbody or like a mini Loungefly. We talked about Loungeflies in that Collections for Kids episode as well. Um, or a Funko Pop bag, those that kind of mini backpack style that you see. So a couple extra things that I would add at that age level, I would add in a small thing of sunscreen. That way they can be in charge of making sure they reapply because at that age, they're probably old enough to do it on their own. Their device, whatever that may be. And also some sort of a portable charger for that. For kiddos that just are using their phone for fun, again, fuel rods are really great because they're really lightweight. And if they die, you can swap them for free at the Disney parks. They're not swappable for free everywhere, but at Disney they are. Making sure that your older kiddo has deodorant in their bag is, again, a great idea for all involved. Earplugs or headphones, like we talked about, grabbing some small sort of headphone earplug situation is great. And then putting them in charge of their budget, right? So, gift card, or if they've got a little debit card or a Visa prepaid card, whatever it is that you're using for their budget while they're in the parks, making sure that that is in their bag too. That way, if they do go off on their own, if they're old enough and responsible enough, you know that they've got some backup money if they need it, or if you want to hand them a $20 bill, though a wallet of some sort in their bag is a great idea as well for those older kiddos. Now, all of that being said, this is not a comprehensive list of things to put in your Disney Parks bags. This is just my experience and our Disney Mom Street community that has given their input on what they would include. Hopefully, it gives you a good starting point if you are someone who is like, I had no idea where to start. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm going to need and what I'm not going to need. Hopefully, this gave you a good kind of springboard to start your planning and packing for your Disney Parks bag. A few other notes that I just want to mention before we kind of wrap this episode up. Do keep in mind that, kind of thinking back to the beginning when we talked about those younger kiddos, if you are traveling with a stroller, do keep in mind that if you have bags or things in the bottom of your stroller and you have to fold your stroller up, they're going to have to come back out, right? But things like ponchos or cooling towels, if they're laid flat, when you're folding your stroller, can typically be left down there. So depending on the type of stroller you have and how it folds up, things like that. But we were able to leave like our ponchos and cooling towels on our in our stroller. So that's just something to consider, that you may not need bag space for those if you've got a stroller that will work that way. And again, just one more note about strollers. Be aware that all strollers will need to be folded up for buses, and anything double wide will need to be folded for the Skyliner. So again, that's part of the reason why having that 2-bag method that we talked about at the beginning is a really good idea. So that way you can just grab your 2 bags out of your stroller. You don't have to worry about, what's where and who's got what, and having all these loose items or loose ends that you need to kind of compile into a bag. You're just ready to go when it comes to the buses. And speaking of strollers, like I mentioned earlier, my next Mom Street episode, not our next hub episode, which I'll talk about here in a moment, will be all about Disney strollers, and kind of the Disney strollers 101 when it comes to taking your stroller, renting your stroller, what strollers can I have, those types of things. We're gonna be talking about that next episode. So if you want more information about that and more tips and tricks about your stroller at Disney, come back for that here in a few weeks. That's what we'll be covering very soon. Our next episode of Mom Street that you will find on your feed will be another hub episode. And we are going to be chatting with our good friend Stevie again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Mom Street USA. As always, if you've got advice, if you need help, if you've got thoughts and opinions on a future episode, please feel free to reach out to us. We are momstreetusa@gmail.com, and you can find us at Mom Street USA on several social media sites as well. If you're looking to connect with us on Discord, we are part of our good friend Kirk at Walrus Carp, his Discord. You can find 2 Mom Street channels on there. The links to all of that is in our social media bio. So if you want to find any of that, that is your best place to head. But until next time, again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your support, and I will catch you next time on Mom Street USA. Bye, everyone.